guests who will be giving us their perspective on the, well, deficit of integrity in the nation. But let me just first give you a preamble about what happened just days ago. The National Citizens Integrity Awards 2023 were organized under the theme Promoting Integrity for a Corruption-Free and Sustainable Society. The National Citizens Integrity Awards is an annual event that aims at recognizing public servants who serve with honesty and integrity, and that tradition began in 2018. The awards were held, but what is the significance? We are digging deeper. Xavier Ejoyi is country director at ActionAid International Uganda. We are also joined by Professor Waswa Balunywa, principal, Makerere University Business School, who is the recipient of the management category of the National Citizens Integrity Awards. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
First and foremost, congratulations, Professor, on taking the management category award at the National Citizens Integrity Awards. First and foremost, let me speak to Xavier Ejoyi, the country director, ActionAid International, to give us the impetus and the perspective that is the foundation of these awards.
So the foundation of these awards is an effort in the fight against corruption. It complements a major initiative that ActionAid and its partners undertake to fight against corruption.
That's right.
We recognize that in the past we've been working with in efforts to address poverty, which is the real focus of ActionAid's work, and then found out that corruption undermines all efforts by all actors in the fight against corruption. And so we then prioritized the fight against corruption through two ways. Number one is to name and shame public officials who are indulged in corruption. Corruption, I mean, they take public resources, they take their access to public office and use it for private gain. So we say, let's name and shame those public officials who stand in the way of quality public health delivery, on roads that are usable, on education services that are impactful. So we've been doing that since 2016. But we also realized that in addition to naming and shaming, we note that there are public servants in this country who really serve with distinction and integrity, that we should not just give credence to corruption only. Yes, let's name and shame, but let's also profile those men and women who are serving this country with integrity. And so we started that process initially in the districts that ActionAid is working in. Currently, there are about 47 of them. But gradually, with partnership with other regional organizations and media houses, we actually stepped that to the national level. And so we call on, this, the way the process works is that across 15 sub-regions and nationally, we call for nominations of men and women of integrity, and we work with the partners to do an initial screening at the regional level, and then we nominate out of the masses nominated a list that comes to the national level. And just to put that in perspective, this year there were initially 674 nominees across the country.
Wow. And
then we filtered that down to 48 at the national level, those who made it to the top. And then out of the 48, 15 were awarded in 3 different categories. Management obligation, that Professor Waswa Balunywa is a beneficiary of. But I also want to add that he's not only just the winner of the management category, but he was also the overall winner of the awards.
Wow.
And then we have the service obligation, frontline service obligation, which are people who are working directly in communities, in public service access points, such as teachers, nurses, doctors, and so on. And then we had the political obligation, people who are in political office but have distinguished themselves with acts of integrity. So across those 3 categories, we were able to award 15 nominees by the citizens.
I'll be asking who the other awardees are, but again, let me come to Professor Waswa Balunywa and again say congratulations.
Thank you very
My
much.
colleague, Elvis Senono, in the world of sports, would call you the player of the tournament, most valuable. Of course, your work and your service in education is commendable. Just 3 weeks ago, I was having a discussion with my colleague Priscilla about the fact that you had been reappointed.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I must make that
there is okay.
I was principal up to May, end of May. So today I'm unemployed.
But of course, you've been nominated, perhaps.
Yes, I've been recommended.
Okay, been recommended, yes. No doubt. There's, looking at the last 40 years, at least that of those 40, I've been following events very well for 25. You've been at the helm of business education. And it's no surprise that you win a management award category that has been organized by ActionAid International. First and foremost, tell us the significance of this particular award, but most importantly, what it does to redirecting your efforts.
I think, first of all, I must thank ActionAid and the entire system that was doing this. I was not aware until somebody said, we're nominating you, can you agree? And I said, yeah, why not? Wow. And I must also thank you as NTV for putting this across. Right. It's a very good feeling that people out there in society recognize your performance. And it's not easy in today, literally most of us in public office are being accused of this, that, and the other. Of course, we have a challenge, as you said. We have an integrity deficit in the country. So you would expect, you know, if somebody wants to take you out, the first thing you'll say is, you are corrupt. But it's a good feeling, and I think we need to do this a little more. My feeling is that this should go back into schools and families. The challenge we have had in the country goes back to the moral degeneration that we've seen, primarily because I want to attribute it to the time when the systems were not working properly. The economy went down and people started finding air to live off. And since then, we've never really actually been able to regain that moral credence in society. So today you'll find in schools children who stand for elections give sweets.
Yeah, it's a tradition that
yes,
we have accepted as
yes.
You know,
the debate. There's a debate today about DNA. You are pointing to the conduct of society. There are lots of things that happen in society, but I think we need to go back to our family values, to our culture, and that's where the world needs to begin. And our political leadership needs to take us there, so that we can regain our cultural values, we can regain our decency, and be able to serve society. Corruption is a leakage. You know, you have money. So whenever people take away the money, it's a leakage in the system.
Sure.
So that means that there is service that is not being rendered. And this is an effort we need to be able to put all our heads together to see how best this can be done.
Okay. Looking at the overall nature of the awards, of course you are the overall winner. I would like to zero in on the individual management category award. When you speak about corruption, many people tend to assume it is those that have been seen to be on the receiving end or the taking hand, so to speak, of corruption. But facilitating corruption comes from those who allow these ones to take. And it's a management issue also, where you see top officials in government, we also see in the private sector, CEOs, we see managers. What is the management posture the nation finds itself right now that either needs to be quickly reworked in order to ensure that vices like corruption, vices like negligence that of course ends into corruption are addressed in order to put Uganda onto the trajectory of transformation that is needed?
Uganda has wonderful laws that really should be able to curb corruption. But the challenges we have, because integrity is about trust, it's about keeping your word. Yeah. That yes, you have all this opportunity, and you refrain from doing something which you feel is not your nature. Is not within.
Even when you can,
Yeah,
you're
yes,
like, no, no,
yes.
no,
So,
that is not
so this is an issue, a moral issue in our society, and from the management point of view, in business you have stakeholders. Stakeholders would like to see good results out of what you're doing. Shareholders would like to see money at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Suppliers would like to have good supply. A customer would like to have a good product. Now, when you look at what is happening in terms of lack of integrity, is that the customer is not getting a good deal. The supplier is not getting, maybe the supplier actually, this is where the problem is. The supplier gets so much money for doing nothing. So from the management perspective, there are various regulations in place in organizations through what you call audit, internal audit, but it is the individual who does something knowingly that he or she is going to benefit personally. And these are the moral values I'm talking about. That we need to restore these values to be able to curb these practices.
Okay. Mr. Ejoyi, the cluster of awards, you said were 15 at the end of it all?
3 clusters, 15 total awards.
15 total awards. Just point out I don't want to say there are some awards that are not important, but when you hear Professor talking about the fact that there is moral decadence, and perhaps addressing some of these issues will have to go down to the family level and even the schools in order to, I don't know whether the plan is there, but when you are coming up with the awards, just take us through how you decided that management, either religion. I just want to have an idea of the breadth of it all.
So corruption is multidimensional. It's a moral issue, and why corruption is perpetuated most times, our moral fiber has been eroded over time. You find citizens beginning to glorify the corrupt and their ill-gotten wealth. They're given prominent seats in churches, mosques, and other gatherings, including when there's a wedding, they announce the biggest contribution to the wedding. They are at funerals prominently. They are driving the latest admirable cars. They're living in opulence and luxury through ill-gotten wealth. And that attitude of citizens, number one, giving prominence to the corrupt and glorifying it, is very difficult to promote integrity, because we place the corrupt in a respectable position, and we think that that narrative needs to be changed from a moral angle. We need to start to recognize men and women, especially in public office, who are serving diligently with distinction and integrity. So you're turning that moral attribute that promotes corruption on its head. Secondly, corruption is also it's a criminal issue. It's an aspect of the law. And there are procedures in place, there are laws in place, and therefore if somebody indulges in corruption, they can be prosecuted. But not all corruption, as I said, is legal and worthy of prosecution. You can set up the laws, but if the society is condoning corruption, that becomes a challenge. And lastly, it is a political issue, because you set the tone at the top. What are those whom we put in place of leadership, especially elective leadership, or as for others appointed, what are they doing to set the tone to ensure that we're able to promote integrity in this country?
All right. In a minute, Professor Wessel Balunya, I want you to speak to the young person who is entering civil service as a graduate, who is entering the private sector as a trailblazing executive on integrity.
Yeah, for the young executives entering the private sector, you need to go out there and succeed. And that success is about hard work, it's about you being reliable, being trustworthy, and the system is going to reward you. If you are trustworthy, you keep your word. And of course, there's a lot of money in the private sector, but it's for those people who are willing to go for it with trust. Whenever you talk to many people, business people in this country, they'll tell you trust is extremely important. Some people have told me, I used to dodge taxes. But I realized that it was more expensive to dodge taxes, and they are now religiously pay their taxes. In public service, of course, public service, especially salaries, are on the lower side. And this is very tempting when somebody in public service sees somebody else elsewhere earning much, possibly twice, 3 times what they earn. So it's very important that in our public service, we streamline the issue of salaries. Okay. So that a PS, okay, maybe a senior person in government, now PSs earn a little bit more. A senior person in government should earn a relatively good amount of money to discourage them from getting into corruption.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, that opens a whole new debate that will not continue, but we shall reserve for another day. That has been Professor Waswa Balunywa, former principal, Makerere University Business School, apparently now recommended for the job again. We've also been talking to Xavier Ejoyi, Country Director, ActionAid International, on the National Citizens Integrity Awards. Let's now go to